Final Four should be a heavyweight matchup. There's some stats here that are pretty interesting, and then I'm going to give you the one at the end that I think could easily be the thing we all point to that decided the outcome of this game. First of all, Houston allows the fewest amount of points in the entire country per game. 58.3 points per game. That's how much they allow. Lowest in the entire country, not in Power 5 or Power 4, whatever you want to call it, not in tournament play, entire country. Duke allows 62.7. That's, they're a real slouch. 7th best in the entire country. 7th fewest points allowed in the entire country. To give you a kind of illustration, last year in the Sweet 16, Duke beat Houston 54-51. Real light 'em up show. Now, most of Duke, obviously not there, just Tyrese Proctor. But a lot of Houston's players were there, and that's the game they want to play. Offensively, Duke scores the 9th most points in the entire country. That's how dominant they've been. 9th most points scored, 7th fewest points allowed. Houston on the surface wouldn't be as good. Okay, they fewest points allowed. They only have the 166th most points scored per game and 74 points per game. However, if you look at Ken Pom efficiency, Duke is number 1. Houston's offense is the 10th most efficient offense, according to Ken Pom. So they don't rank near the middle of the country in points scored because they can't score. It's because they play a absolute sluggish pace. On some per possession metrics, they're actually a really good offense. None of that is the stat that I think is going to decide this game. Here's the stat that I believe is going to decide this game. The average height of Houston's 7 leading scorers is 6 feet 4.3 inches. The average height of Duke's 7 leading scorers is 6 feet 7.3 inches. They have, on average, a 3-inch advantage for every player in their rotation. That, to me, is something that Duke has to take advantage of, and it's not easy because my first thought was like, wow, Houston 6'4", 6'4.3". Like I'm just a hair under 6'4", and I'd consider myself an undersized college basketball player. So they must just get bullied on the glass. They must get every shot blocked. I looked it up. It's not true. Duke is 11th in rebounding margin in the country. Houston's 32nd. Out of over 350 teams, they're the 32nd best rebounding team as far as how many rebounds they get against how many rebounds their opponents get. That's really good. And I don't care if you got a bunch of 7-footers. That's really good if you're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". They're good. They actually block significantly more shots per game than Duke does. All those volleyball spikes that Kaman Malawash has, all the volleyball spikes that Cooper Flagg has, Houston blocks a bunch more shots per game than Duke does, despite the fact that they have nobody that has scored more than 13 points all season taller than 6'8". Nobody. Think about that. So here's what Duke has to be able to do. Duke has to be able to use their length on defense. If they are going to switch everything, then you are without a doubt going to have 7-footers on 6'3" at some point in your defensive rotation. That can be an advantage or a disadvantage. The other thing that is going to happen, or Houston is going to try to make it happen, is they're going to try to get the big guys in foul trouble. And we talked about this before the Elite Eight game for Duke. When you're drawing paths for how Houston wins this one, Kaman Malawash and Patrick Gungba in foul trouble is one of the most obvious. Why? Well, think about what happens if you're Houston. Houston plays one of the slowest games in the country. What does that mean? You have to defend for 30 seconds, the entire shot clock. And they're pretty good offensive rebounding despite their size. One offensive rebound, you have to defend for 60 seconds or more. What happens when you're tired? Stupid fouls. Right? When you defend for an entire shot clock, then they get the offensive rebound, somebody's driving in, you don't stay vertical, you swat. You don't move your feet as fast, you use your arms, you reach. What happens when a 7-footer is being boxed out by a 6'5"er over the back. Malawash, I actually think, gets called for a bunch of really bad over the backs because his entire upper body is above the head of the other player, so he's not actually making contact and he's like reaching over. But refs call it. Refs call it. If you're going into a game where nobody in their rotation is taller than 6'7", you need your 7'2", you need your 6'11" to play as much as possible. You can't be artificially turned into a roster that matches theirs. So if I'm looking for a stat that tells me Duke is going to win, I'm looking at it and saying foul trouble for Malawash and Ngongba. If they stay out of foul trouble to where Coach Shire, John Shire, can put them in the game whenever he wants, not, all right, we got to take you out. All right, you got to sit till halftime. Not, all right, now you're done till this second to last media timeout. If he gets to use his instincts, which he's talked about in post-game pressers a bunch, coaching to his instincts. If he gets to use his instincts on when to have the big guys out there, when to pull them, when to switch them up, I think that's massive for taking advantage of their height against Houston.
You're also hoping for Duke that another week of Malik Brown getting that shoulder stronger. Mm-hmm. We did see him play about 4 or 5 minutes in each of the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games. So if you need to play him 12, I'm sure you probably could if you needed to. And he's also so great defensively, he can match up. He's 6'9" himself, so he could match up perfectly with the size, I guess you can say, lack of a better term, with Houston. But I'm also wondering as well is that if Duke can get Houston to run, it takes them out of their element, and I think Duke is capable of doing that if they get the defensive stops and they can push the pace. If they get Houston to play at a faster tempo than they're used to, Houston might get cooked.
I have – first of all, let me address what you said first, Malik Brown. I don't think they wanted him to play in as if they could avoid him playing. They didn't. But what happened?
He didn't play in the second half of either of the games, by the way.
In the first half, Malawash and Ngongba got in foul trouble, and they just needed 6'9", and he was. And he was doing some stuff one-handed and almost had a block that I was like, ooh, keep that other hand completely out of there. Secondly, this is another one of my favorite stats. Houston in possessions per game. You mentioned how they want to play real slow. I mentioned how they want to play real slow. They are 358th in possessions per game. There are 364 teams in the entire country. 358th.
So they're slower than Virginia.
Actually, no.
Oh, they're not?
Virginia is like 361 out of 364. Drake is dead last, and those are the only, I don't know, Sam Houston or something's down there. A bunch of teams that you don't really know anything about. Drake was dead last. UVA was third or fourth to last, and they were just fractions of a possession faster than those teams.
So the same company.
Yes, exactly. And here's what that does for Duke. You have to – I don't want Duke to try to play their tempo at all, but I do want them to make sure their offensive possessions are great. If it's a first 5-second three, which they have pulled at times, right? You're open, you knock it down, that's fine. That's a good high percentage shot, but what you can't do is defend for 45 seconds, take a bad shot quickly, defend for 45 seconds, take a bad shot quickly, because that's what they want you to do. You have to make sure you're short, long, whatever, you play your tempo. Just make sure you're getting good shots and make sure you're staying out of foul trouble. I think that's going to be huge.